I'll never forget the day my world came crashing down. My name is David, and for nearly a decade, I had built a life with my wife, Amanda. We had a modest suburban home, 2 adorable cats, and what I thought was a strong foundation of trust. Looking back now, I realize how naive I had been. It all started subtly. Amanda began staying late at work more often than usual. She was a marketing executive, so I didn't think much of it at first. But then her phone, which she'd always left casually on the coffee table, was suddenly locked and never out of her sight. I wanted to believe her excuses about work deadlines, but something in my gut told me otherwise. One evening, I stumbled upon a series of messages on our shared laptop. They were between Amanda and a coworker named Mike. The flirtatious tone and plans to meet outside of work made my heart sink. And it didn't stop with Mike, there were others, too: Tom, Stephen. Names that turned my stomach every time I saw them. For days, I said nothing. Instead, I collected evidence. I checked phone records, pieced together her work schedule, and even installed a tracking app on her car. What I discovered left no doubt in my mind: Amanda was cheating on me, repeatedly, with multiple coworkers. When I finally confronted her, I was calm. I had a folder of evidence ready. As she walked through the door that evening, I simply handed it to her and said, "Explain this." She was stunned at first, then defensive. She tried to deny it, but the proof was irrefutable. Eventually, she broke down, crying and begging for forgiveness. Her tears didn't move me. The trust we'd built over the years was shattered, and I knew there was no going back. The next morning, I went to see a divorce attorney. I was determined to protect myself and ensure the process went as smoothly as possible. My attorney was impressed by how thoroughly I had documented everything. "You have a strong case," she assured me, but I wasn't done. Amanda's workplace had a strict no fraternization policy. I anonymously sent an email to HR, attaching the evidence of her affairs. Within weeks, an internal investigation was launched, and Amanda, along with the coworkers involved, was fired. Her reputation both professionally and socially was in ruins. Friends who once admired her now whispered behind her back. Even her parents expressed their disappointment and distanced themselves from her. The divorce proceedings were brutal, but I came out ahead. I got the house, a significant portion of our savings, and, most importantly, closure. Amanda's betrayal had cost her everything, and I felt vindicated. At first, I threw myself into work and hobbies to distract myself. I joined a kickboxing class to channel my anger and a hiking group to reconnect with nature. It was during one of these hikes that I met Sophie. Sophie was unlike anyone I'd ever met. She was a photographer with an infectious laugh and a way of making people feel at ease. We started chatting about the trail we were on, and before I knew it, our conversations turned into shared hikes and long talks over coffee. Sophie had her own story of heartbreak, which made her patient with me. She never pushed me to open up but always listened when I was ready. Over time, Sophie became a source of light in my life. She encouraged me to embrace joy again, to take risks, and to find beauty in the mundane. Together, we explored city markets, hidden trails, and tranquil forests. She introduced me to photography, and I found solace in capturing moments and freezing them in time. One crisp autumn morning, Sophie invited me to her favorite spot, a secluded mountain lake. As we set up our cameras, she handed me a thermos of hot chocolate and smiled. "This place has always been my escape," she said. "I'm glad I can share it with you." For the first time in years, I felt truly happy. Months later, I received a message from Amanda. She wanted to meet and apologize in person. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a coffee shop, where she tearfully admitted to her mistakes and expressed regret for the pain she'd caused. "I appreciate the apology," I told her, "but I've moved on. I hope you find a way to rebuild your life, just as I'm rebuilding mine." As I walked away, I felt a sense of closure. That evening, I met Sophie for dinner. Under a canopy of twinkling lights, she reached across the table and took my hand. Her eyes, filled with understanding and hope, reminded me of how far I'd come. During a winter getaway to a snowy cabin, I surprised Sophie with a small, heartfelt gesture. I gave her a journal filled with memories of our adventures and notes about what she meant to me. She read it with tears in her eyes. "This is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever done for me," she whispered. "You brought me back to life," I said. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want you in it." Our relationship flourished. We dreamed of traveling the world, starting a business, and building a home filled with love and creativity. For the first time, I envisioned a future brimming with possibilities. In the spring, I gave Sophie a photo album I'd curated. Each page contained a story from our journey together. On the final page, I wrote, "Thank you for showing me that love can heal even the deepest wounds. Here's to the journey ahead." She looked up at me, her eyes shimmering with joy. "Here's to us," she said, pulling me into a warm embrace. The ordeal with Amanda had been harrowing, but it taught me a valuable lesson about resilience. In the end, I emerged not as a victim, but as a survivor ready to embrace the next chapter of my life with love, trust, and hope guiding me forward. The months passed, and Sophie and I became inseparable. We started hosting dinners for friends, where laughter filled the air and stories were shared over candlelight. Sophie's positivity was infectious, and she had a way of drawing people into her world of warmth and creativity. She taught me how to see the beauty in everyday moments, like the way sunlight filtered through the trees or how the city lights shimmered on rainy nights. One evening, while we were cleaning up after a dinner party, Sophie paused and looked at me. "Do you ever think about what brought us here?" she asked. "All the time," I replied. "I used to think everything fell apart, but now I see it was falling into place." As our love deepened, we began planning a future together. Sophie dreamed of opening her own photography studio, and I supported her every step of the way. We spent weekends scouting locations, designing layouts, and brainstorming ideas. It felt incredible to build something meaningful together, a stark contrast to the life I had left behind. One summer evening, as we sat on a hill watching the sunset, Sophie turned to me with a mischievous smile. "Close your eyes," she said. I complied, feeling a mix of curiosity and excitement. When I opened them, she was holding a small, wrapped package. "This is for you," she said. Inside was a leather-bound notebook with my name embossed on the cover. "It's for your thoughts, your dreams, and the stories you want to tell," Sophie explained. "You've come so far, and I think the world needs to hear your journey." Her gesture moved me deeply. For the first time in years, I considered the possibility of writing, of turning my pain and growth into something that could inspire others. That notebook became a sanctuary where I poured my heart, relived memories, and envisioned the future. As the seasons changed, so did our lives. Sophie's photography studio thrived, and I found myself reconnecting with passions I had long buried. Together, we celebrated milestones and faced challenges, always leaning on each other for strength. By the time winter arrived, our bond had become unshakable. On a snowy evening in December, beneath a canopy of twinkling lights, I asked Sophie to marry me. Her tearful yes was the culmination of a journey that had started with heartbreak but ended in a love that felt destined. Looking back, I realized that the pain Amanda caused was a necessary step in my evolution. It forced me to confront my vulnerabilities, rebuild my self-worth, and open my heart to the possibility of true happiness. Sophie didn't just mend the broken pieces, she showed me how to create something entirely new, something stronger and more beautiful than before. Now, as I sit at my desk writing this story, I glance over at Sophie, who's editing photos with a contented smile. Life has a way of surprising you, of taking you to places you never imagined. For me, it led to a love that feels like home, a future filled with hope, and a profound gratitude for every twist and turn that brought me here.